Whoa! Hey boys and bears, it's Dan. It's time for Dancing Scream Queens again. Right now I got on Caroline Munro. Caroline Munro, here's her record. This is like, you can't even call it a hit, but she made this record, Pump It Up. So this was produced by none other than Gary Newman here in my car, and I feel safest of all. So this was produced by Gary Newman. This is my Dancing Scream Queens 80s edition. So I'm going to go through some divas who did dance music in the 80s. So Caroline Munro, here she is, she's bigger. She appeared in the movie Slaughter High. She was the lead final girl on Slaughter High, and she had one of the best chase scenes ever, and really creepy masked killer in this one. So she was in Slaughter High, and she was also in what's considered to be Demon 6. You know, they have all these Demons movies that they pretended were Demon sequels. And she was in, what was the other one? Last Horror Movie, which I have it on the way here because I want to see it. And that's with Joe Spinelli guy from Maniac. So that was another 80s movie by Miss Caroline Munro. So this is her only real big song. You see I was playing my Space Invaders. Let's get in the 80s move, Space Invaders. So that was it. She's our first diva for today, and then I have a couple more that I want to go through, some goodies. I got my 80s stuff on, got my MTV shirt, I got my tight shorts. These shorts make my ass look fat. They better. So, here we go. This is Miss Toni. We all know Toni. We love Toni. We love her one hit. She should have had more hits. This is one of her songs from her second album. You know, this is, oh no, this isn't. This is actually, she made this one movie called Slaughterhouse Rock, and she starred in it. She was this ghostly presence, and she did a dance number to this song, which is actually Toni Basil singing to Devo's song. Devo and Toni collaborated a couple of times. They worked on her first album with her. They did a couple of background vocals and stuff on her first album that had her big hit Mickey. This is another Toni song. This is from her second album. Her second album should have been huge, but it wasn't. She didn't have a single hit. It was actually produced by Richie Zito, who worked closely with Giorgio Moroder. Giorgio Moroder produced all of Donna Summer's huge disco hits, then moved on to stuff like Electric Dreams, Never Ending Story, the Scarface soundtrack, which we're going to get to because one of my other 80s divas has songs produced by Giorgio Moroder. This Toni stuff, this is from her second album, these next few songs. I think that Giorgio had a hand in this sounds just like Electric Dreams. I think he had a hand in producing them. But on the sleeve, on the inside of the record, it says, special thanks to Giorgio Moroder. What exactly is she thanking him for? Because this sounds just like Giorgio's stuff. So this is Over My Head. This was released as a single, it didn't go anywhere. And then the other song that comes after this, Suspense. Suspense, another great dance song. This should have been a hit. This should have been a Halloween hit. I put it in my playlist for Halloween. So Suspense is going to come up next, I think, right? Let's see. Yeah, Suspense should be her next song. And then that's it. And then we're going to move on to our last diva. Here's Suspense. This is like her spooky song. You know, everybody's got to have that little spooky song in the 80s. They gotta have one song on one of their albums that has creepy feel. Listen to this. Spooky. Very mysterious sounding. So that's why she called it Suspense, right? Gotta get some water. Hold on. Suspense. Totally sounds like Electric Dreams, Never Ending Story. Those were his two biggest songs. Oh, and he did all the Flashdance stuff. He did Flashdance. That was his other big one, Giorgio Moroder producing. So, let's see. Who do we have next? We have one more diva, and she's a biggie because I think everybody loves her. She's a big old scream queen. She's an 80s queen. She's been around doing her stuff for years. So, we're going to move into her next. Let me just get her stuff. Okay, here we go. So here comes our next scream queen. Just make sure my stuff is piled up right. Okay, here we go. So now, the next one, this is her. E.G. Daily. We all love E.G. Daily. There's E.G. Daily. Did a lot of recording in the 80s. She did a lot of soundtrack stuff. She did a lot of acting. And she did a couple of horror movies. Woohoo! And she still does horror movies. So that's E.G. She appeared in a couple of episodes of Fame. She was in No Small Affair. She was even in Streets of Fire. Her role was really bizarre. The Alley Girl, that's what she's most known for. She has songs on the Better Off Dead soundtrack. She doesn't act in the movie, but this one. Wait, we gotta go to this. This is from The Breakfast Club. She has a song on The Breakfast Club soundtrack. Waiting. She's got amazing music. She's like cross between dance and new wave. I love her. So this is from Breakfast Club. She has so much stuff here. I can't believe it. So then we have I was saying, oh, Better Off Dead. So here's the theme song for Better Off Dead. She sings this in the movie. She appears in the movie. Like I think at one point they run through a club and she's singing up on stage, but she's not acting in the movie. But this is Better Off Dead. She's got a couple of songs on this soundtrack. She got a couple of songs on Summer School. She worked with Stock Aitken Waterman, who produced Kylie Minogue, Rick Astley, Dead or Alive, Donna Summer in the 80s. So that was from Summer School. She has a couple of songs on that soundtrack as well. Then here she goes. This is when she worked with Giorgio Moroder from the Scarface soundtrack. Amazing soundtrack. It's all Giorgio Moroder's thumping dance music, right? So that's Scarface. Then she really has, well, let me go through her horror movies. She has, in the 80s, she did, one horror movie. This was hard to get for a while. One Dark Night with Meg Tilly. She was in this. This is a goodie. It was like, I think it was like PG or PG-13 too at the time, but it was still really scary. So this was really her only horror movie, I think, in the 80s. And then, after that, she moved on, and she did her other stuff. She appeared on Friends in the 90s, and she was doing, I think, the Rugrats voice or something. And then in the 2000s, she's made a couple of horror movies. This is a biggie. She was in Devil's Rejects. This is a picture of her with some familiar faces, some familiar horror men, and she signed it for me. She was sweet enough to sign it for me. Thanks, E.G. And so that was one of her big movies. She was in a movie called Cutting Room. And she was in it. There's a lot of hot guys in this one. Mustang Sally's Horror House. So, Horror House is really more like it. So, Mustang Sally, that was another one of her big ones. And now the song playing now, this is my favorite song by her, 80s song. Love in the Shadows. It was originally on the soundtrack to Thief of Hearts. So that was the first time this song appeared on the Thief of Hearts soundtrack. And then a couple years later, she released a full-length album. She did, either she remixed it or re-recorded it, I'm not sure, but she did this version. This is the extended version. So that was her last big song, and that's the last song I wanted to talk about. And E.G., we love E.G., Tony, and who was our other babe? We got Caroline Munro. So that's my 80s edition of Dancing Scream Queens. I'm all psychic. People who lived in the 80s, we just love the 80s. We're never going to let it go. So that's the way it is. So now I'm going to go back to playing some Atari Pac-Man. While you guys listen to this song will take you out. Got my original Atari, love it. So that's it, guys. Oh, this was the worst game ever. Worst. But I still love it. So that's it, guys. That's it for today. That's my Dancing Scream Queens of the 80s. Hope you enjoyed it. Later.